So this is huge news that will very likely be completely ignored by the mainstream, by the corporate press in Canada because, well, Justin gives them money. And he's not giving them money to say bad things about him, is he? But anyway, this is an article by Rupa Subramanya, and it's from Common Sense News. Court documents reveal Canada's travel ban had no scientific basis. Now, I'm not surprised by this at all. And as we'll see, this was a totally political decision. It says, in the days leading up to the mandate, transportation officials were frantically looking for a rationale for it. They came up short. Hey, but we still got the mandate, didn't we? So for those outside of Canada, the mandate was for a domestic travel within Canada on planes and trains, and you had to be fully vaccinated. And at that time, that was 2 doses. I think that's going to change in the future, obviously, but at the time it was 2 doses. And if you didn't have 2, you couldn't get on a plane or a train. And Canada's a very big country, and it's covered with snow and ice in the wintertime. So it's an extremely serious matter. But anyway, let's get into this. On August 13th, 2021, the Canadian government announced that anyone who hadn't been vaccinated against COVID would soon be barred from planes and trains. In many cases, the backward, and of course that's everybody who hadn't been jabbed enough, could no longer travel between provinces or leave the country. If you lived in Winnipeg and wanted to visit your mother on her deathbed in London or Hong Kong or perhaps Quebec City, you'd better get jabbed or resign yourself to never seeing your mother again. And that's because the Liberal Party in Canada and Trudeau are so empathetic. But anyway, Jennifer Little, the Director General of COVID Recovery, the secretive government panel that crafted the mandate, called it one of the strongest vaccination mandates for travelers in the world. They're quite proud of it, apparently. It was draconian and sweeping, and it fit neatly with the public persona that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had cultivated, that of the sleek, progressive, forward-looking technocrat, guided by fact and reason. Well, actually just polling, but okay. The Canadian Medical Association Journal, in a June 2022 article, observed that Canada had amongst the most sustained, stringent policies regarding restrictions on internal movement. But recently released court documents, which capture the decision-making behind the travel mandate, indicate that, far from following the science, the Prime Minister and his cabinet were focused on politics. Yeah, and if you're in, say, I don't know, the UK or the United States, well, you know the feeling. And get this is really an important part of this. 2 days after announcing the mandate, Trudeau called a snap election, presumably expecting that his Liberal Party, which was in the minority in the House of Commons, would benefit from the announcement and be catapulted into the majority. So, I mean, back then it was transparently political. You know, you make the announcement, it's a big announcement, and then 2 days later, you call for an election. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on. But again, at the time, you know, he was just following the science, right? Just the science. But anyway, as it turned out, the Liberals failed to win a majority in the September 2021 election. In the meantime, roughly 5 million unvaccinated Canadians were barred from visiting loved ones, working, or otherwise traveling. Anyway, the court documents are part of a lawsuit filed by 2 Canadian residents against the government. Until last month, they were under seal. Now, it goes on to give some background on the 2 plaintiffs here, but we'll skip that just for the sake of concision. So the whole point of the case was to lift that shroud, and that'd be the shroud of secrecy surrounding this, and cast a spotlight on the unscientific basis of the mandate. Among other things, the court documents indicate no one in the COVID recovery unit, including Jennifer Little, the Director General, had any formal education in epidemiology, medicine, or public health. And that's fine. They're not there to know anything. They're there to do what Justin tells them to. Let's see, Little, who has an undergraduate degree in literature from the University of Toronto, testified that there were 20 people in the unit. So let me get this straight. Degree in literature. And that qualifies her to make decisions which affect the lives of millions of Canadians in serious ways. When Presvelos, and that is the lawyer for the two people suing the government, asked her whether anyone in the unit had any professional experience in public health. She said there was one person, Monique St. Laurent. According to St. Laurent's LinkedIn profile, she appears to be a civil servant who briefly worked for the Public Health Agency of Canada. St. Laurent is not a doctor, Little said. And when reached on the phone, she confirmed she was a member of COVID recovery. So in other words, a bunch of people who had no business having any say in this matter whatsoever. Welcome to Trudeau's Canada. Little suggested that a senior official in the Prime Minister's cabinet, or possibly the Prime Minister himself, had ordered COVID recovery to impose the travel mandate. During cross-examination, Little told Presvelos repeatedly that discussions about the mandate had taken place at senior and very senior levels, but she refused to say who had given her team the order to impose the travel mandate. Quote, "I'm not at liberty to disclose anything that is subject to cabinet confidence." And this is important. The term cabinet confidence is noteworthy because it refers to the Prime Minister's cabinet, meaning that Little could not talk about who had directed the COVID recovery unit to impose the travel mandate because someone at the very highest levels of government was apparently behind it. Well, we know who was behind it, don't we? Here. This sounds like Trudeau using a secretive, unqualified panel to rubber stamp something that he wanted for political gain, something that was going to affect millions of Canadians negatively. That sounds like corruption to me. But anyway, in the days leading up to the implementation of the travel mandate, transportation officials were frantically looking for a rationale for it. They came up short. That was made clear by an email exchange in the latter half of October 21 between Aaron McCrory and Don Lumley Mylari. McCrory is the Associate Assistant Deputy Minister for Safety and Security in Transport Canada, the department that houses COVID recovery. Lumley Mylari is an official in the Public Health Agency of Canada. In the email exchange, McCrory seemed to be casting about for a credible rationale for the travel mandate. This was less than 2 weeks before the mandate was set to kick in. Quote, "To the extent that updated data exists, or that there is clearer evidence of the safety benefit of vaccination on the users or other stakeholders of the transportation system." You notice stakeholders, that's a World Economic Forum term that they like to use. And it's no coincidence that it's in this email. But anyway, it would be helpful to assist Transport Canada supporting its measures, McCrory wrote. So less than 2 weeks before the mandate is set to kick in, you've got this guy from, this official from Transport Canada asking somebody from Public Health Agency of Canada for a reason why the mandate's a good idea. I mean, you might think they'd want that before they announce a mandate, right? I mean, that's if everybody's acting, honestly and in good faith, which, well, Trudeau, right? 4 days later, on October 22nd, McCrory emailed Lumley Mylari again. Quote, "Our requirements come in on October 30th, in just over a week. So need something fairly soon. Something to justify the thing they've already decided to do," claiming that it was based on science. On October 28th, Lumley Mylari replied to McCrory with a series of bullet points outlining the benefits, generally speaking, of the vaccine. She did not address McCrory's question about the transportation system. Yes, and this mandate was going to hit the transportation system. It was going to prevent people who weren't fully jabbed from getting on a plane or a train. But anyway, noting that the Public Health Agency of Canada was updating its public health considerations with regard to the mandates. 2 days later, on October 30th, the travel mandate took effect. So there you have it. That's following the science in Trudeau's Canada. And as for this COVID recovery panel, on whose guidance the mandate was based and justified, has no website, and its name appears almost nowhere in government records. So that's awfully convenient, isn't it? Here's from Bruce Pardy, a law professor at Queen's University and a former board member at the Conservative Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. He said, quote, "The Trudeau government has claimed to follow the science on COVID, but that science is strangely different than it is everywhere else." Yeah, you just had to look at what other Western countries were doing to see something was off. And it's not that there weren't ridiculous and counterproductive measures taken in other Western countries. It's just that Canada was so much worse. I mean, Trudeau was really determined to stand out as the worst amongst a bad lot. Anyway, he continues. Instead, its policies are based on spite, divisiveness, and pure politics. COVID now serves as an excuse to punish the government's ideological enemies. Yeah, and Trudeau is very open about his disdain for those who disagree with him. I mean, he called people that were opposed to the mandates racist and misogynists. Very strange coming from a guy who's been photographed multiple times with blackface. Yeah, I know it was 20 years ago that those pictures were taken. But when those pictures exist, you've lost the right to go around accusing other people of isms and phobias. And a decent human being would recognize that. But he was also quite honest on his feelings about the truckers too. He called them a fringe minority with unacceptable views. Well, that's great. And as we can see here, Trudeau didn't even believe what he was saying. But anyway, I'm just going to end this off with wishing Trudeau a happy vacation in Costa Rica. And don't hurry back. Anyway, please subscribe, like, and share. Sharing really helps me out. It makes a big difference. I notice when people share my content. Thank you for that. I will see you next time.